Good evening, live from New Delhi. You're watching DD India Live, India's voice to the world. I'm Shubhendu Ghosh, coming up in the next 30 minutes. Prime Minister Narendra Modi launches mega development projects in eastern India. 12,000 crore rupees worth projects in Gaya, Bihar. Also inaugurates multiple metro rail projects in Kolkata, West Bengal. Former Sri Lanka President Ranil Wickremesinghe arrested in Colombo, accused of misuse of state funds. Israel denies reports of famine in Gaza. Prime Minister Netanyahu says will begin Gaza ceasefire talks. Russia and Ukraine target each other's energy infrastructure. Ukrainian attack suspends Russian oil flows to Hungary and Slovakia. Russia's defense ministry said on Friday its forces have captured the villages of Katinivka, Volodymyrivka and Ruslan in Ukraine's eastern Donetsk region. The advance brings Moscow closer to Ukraine's key defensive lines and ongoing destructive battles. In nearby Kostianivka, Ukrainian authorities cut gas supplies after Russian shelling damaged a pipeline. One civilian was injured and a residential building caught fire. Both nations continue to accuse one another of obstructing the peace talks. And Russian oil supplies to Hungary and Slovakia could be suspended for at least 5 days following the latest Ukrainian strike on part of Druzhba pipeline in Russia. The Hungarian and Slovak governments have written to Europe's Executive Commission urging it to guarantee the security of oil supplies from Russia. EU members Slovakia and Hungary have opposed the bloc's decision to phase out Russian oil and gas by the end of 2027. Russia and Ukraine have stepped up attacks on each other's energy infrastructure over the past few weeks, despite a push by US President Donald Trump to reach a deal to end the conflict. Meanwhile, Ukrainian President Zelensky held a joint press conference with NATO Secretary General Mark Rutte in Kiev. During the visit, Rutte called for robust security guarantees for Ukraine, reaffirming NATO's continued support.
The United States will indeed be involved in providing security guarantees for Ukraine. Robust security guarantees will be essential, and this is what we are now working to define. So that when the time comes, for you to enter that bilateral meeting, you have the unmistakable force of Ukraine's friends behind you, ensuring that Russia will uphold any deal and will never ever again attempt to take 1 square kilometer of Ukraine.
In other news, rejecting a report from Global Hunger Monitor, Israel's foreign ministry has said there is no famine in Gaza. In a statement, the ministry said Integrated Food Security Phase Classification published a tailor-made fabricated report to fit Hamas's fake campaign. The monitor said over 500,000 people, nearly a quarter of Palestinians in Gaza, are experiencing famine and that the number was due to rise by the end of September. Meanwhile, Israel's Prime Minister Netanyahu says the country will begin Gaza ceasefire talks. He adds the country is also pushing ahead with its plan to capture the Gaza city and defeat Hamas. More in this report.
In a major breakthrough, Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu has said that Israel will begin Gaza ceasefire and hostage release negotiations with immediate effect. Netanyahu added that he was meeting military commanders to approve plans for capturing Gaza city and defeating Hamas.
I arrived at Gaza Division to approve the plans that the Israeli army presented to me and the Minister of Defense for taking over Gaza city and defeating Hamas. I greatly appreciate the presence of the reserve soldiers and of course the regular army for this vital goal. At the same time, I have issued instructions to begin immediate negotiations for the release of all our hostages and an end to the conflict on terms acceptable to Israel.
In a sign that the government was pressing ahead with the plan, the military has called up 60,000 reservists. Meanwhile, Israelis continue to protest for the release of hostages. Global pressure is also mounting, with UN Chief Antonio Guterres renewing calls for a Gaza ceasefire.
I must reiterate that it is vital to reach immediately a ceasefire in Gaza and the unconditional release of all hostages, and to avoid the massive deaths and destruction that a military operation against Gaza City would inevitably cause. Simultaneously, the decision by the Israeli authorities to expand illegal settlement construction which would divide the West Bank must be reversed. All settlement construction is a violation of international law.
The development comes after Hamas accepted a ceasefire proposal put forward by Egypt and Qatar. The plan calls for a 60-day ceasefire and the release of 10 hostages held in Gaza by Hamas and of 18 bodies. In return, Israel would release nearly 200 long serving Palestinian inmates. Once the temporary ceasefire begins, the proposal is for Hamas and Israel to begin talks on a permanent ceasefire that would include the return of the remaining Israeli hostages. Bureau Report, TD India.
In other developments, Iranian Foreign Minister Abbas Araghchi will have a joint telephone call with his French, British and German counterparts on Friday to discuss nuclear talks and sanctions. The three European nations have threatened to activate United Nations sanctions on Iran under a snapback mechanism if Iran does not return to the negotiating table over its nuclear program. The countries, along with the United States, contend that Iran is using the nuclear program to potentially develop weapons. In 2018, President Trump pulled the US out of the Iran nuclear agreement, citing non-compliance by Tehran. The US has accused Iran of trying to build nuclear weapons, a charge that Tehran denies. The US and European Union released details of a trade deal on Thursday that foresees lower car tariffs but no relief for Europe's wine sector. Brussels, however, said it would push for further concessions as negotiations remain underway. Under the framework accord clinched by Trump and EU's Ursula von der Leyen, the maximum all-inclusive 15% rate would apply to the vast majority of European exports, including cars, pharmaceuticals, semiconductors, lumber, and even wine and spirits. However, EU believes the tariff rate of 15% on cars, which is lower than the current over 27%, will apply retroactively from August 1st, having received assurances on the matter from the US counterpart. But this will happen only once EU introduces legislation to eliminate its own tariffs on American industrial products. French Trade Minister Laurent Saint-Martin said his government would seek additional exemptions in the trade deal. The office of Italian Prime Minister Giorgia Meloni said the agreement was not yet an ideal but final point, but a trade war had been avoided. Under the agreement, EU committed to significantly improving market access to a range of American seafood and agricultural goods, including tree nuts, dairy products, fruits, vegetables, pork, bison meat. Let's now take a look at this infographic showing total EU exports to the US. According to Eurostat data, in 2024, last year, total EU exports to the US amounted 533 billion euros. Out of all, pharmaceuticals accounted for 20% of the EU's exports to the United States. Former Sri Lankan President Ranil Wickremesinghe was produced before Colombo Fort Magistrates Court shortly after he was arrested. Police allege the 76-year-old leader diverted state money to cover expenses when he travelled to the UK to attend the PhD graduation of his wife, Professor Maitri Wickremesinghe, at the University of Wolverhampton. The visit, investigators say, was tagged onto an official tour of Cuba and the United States but had no government purpose. Funds of about $50,000 was reportedly spent on the airfare, accommodation and related costs for the London leg. Wickremesinghe and his United National Party have denied the allegations. Wickremesinghe served as Sri Lanka's president from 2022 to 2024. Bangkok Criminal Court on Friday cleared former Prime Minister Thaksin Shinawatra of charges of violating Thailand's strict law on royal insults. Thaksin, talking to reporters outside the Bangkok court, said he had been cleared in the case which saw him facing up to 15 years in prison under laws forbidding criticism of King Maha Vajiralongkorn and his family. Former Thai PM had denied wrongdoing in the case brought by the royalist military stemming from a 2015 interview that he gave to a foreign media. The acquittal marks the latest turbulent chapter that has seen his political fortune rise and fall over the past 2 decades. Elected as Prime Minister in 2001 and again in 2005, Thaksin was ousted by the army in 2006, took himself into exile 2 years later. He pledged repeatedly to return despite being convicted on graft and abuse of power charges. In his absence, Thaksin finally made good on his vow in August 2023, touching down in Bangkok to a hero's welcome from his supporters on the day his Pheu Thai party returned to office. He was immediately arrested and sentenced to 8 years in jail, but was whisked to a police hospital within hours on health grounds. Within days, King Maha Vajiralongkorn had cut his term to 1 year, and Thaksin returned to his Bangkok home in February of 2024, having seemingly not seen the inside of a jail cell. The verdict came a week before another court rules whether Thaksin's daughter Paitongtarn Shinawatra will be thrown out of office as Prime Minister. Australia and the Philippines are set to finalize a new defence pact in 2026 aimed at enhancing military cooperation in the Indo-Pacific. The agreement will focus on joint military drills, boosting combined operational capabilities and strengthening regional deterrence. The pact will also support infrastructure development at 5 locations in the Philippines. Australian Defence Minister Richard Marley highlighted the importance of maintaining a rules-based order, particularly in the South China Sea.
We are both countries which are deeply invested in the rules-based order, and we are both countries which seek to work to uphold that order. And we both acknowledge and are experiencing the pressure that the rules-based order is being placed under here in the Indo-Pacific. Now, we work really closely with the Philippines in terms of asserting the rules-based order in the South China Sea and the West Philippine Sea.
And Philippines Defense Secretary Gilberto Teodoro condemned China's actions in disputed areas, emphasizing the need for international law and trust in negotiations.
The activities of China in any area, whether in the Sierra Madre or any area under their nebulous claims, are a matter not only of concern but of condemnation, because these are in gross violations of international law. We really need international law to have some parity so that might does not mean right. And we are also used to negotiating in good faith and not with insincerity.
Moving on, the Trump administration announced on Thursday sweeping review of all U.S. visa holders, potentially affecting more than 55 million people. A State Department official said all visa holders are subject to, they say, continuous vetting, which includes monitoring of any signs of ineligibility, such as overstays, criminal conduct, or links to terrorist activity. The review process would include an examination of visa holders' social media profiles, home country law enforcement and immigration records, and any violation of U.S. laws, including those committed after arrival. The review represents one of the largest visa enforcement efforts in recent U.S. history, could impact a wide spectrum of travelers from students and workers to family visa holders. State Department says visas that allow people to stay in the United States are revoked anytime if there are indicators of overstays, criminal activity, threats to public safety, engaging in any form of terrorist activity or providing support to a terrorist organization. The State Department earlier said it has revoked 6,000 visas since Trump took office earlier this year. In Germany, panda twins Lenny and Lottie are celebrating their first birthday at Berlin Zoo. In the wild, pandas tend to only raise one of their cubs if they have twins, making the extra human help necessary. The two female panda babies and their parents, Meng Meng and Jiao Qing, are the only giant pandas living in Germany. Vietnam's capital city Hanoi is drawing large number of domestic and international visitors. With just over 10 days to the National Day on September 2nd, hotel and accommodation searches in Hanoi have jumped 370% compared to the same period last year. Notably, heritage-focused tourism continues to lead visitor interest in Hanoi. In China's Shanghai, zookeepers prepare ice blocks and watermelons to help animals cope with extreme heat. Shanghai continues to issue high-temperature alerts as temperatures reach 38 degrees Celsius. The heat wave, which began on August 6th, has now persisted for 16 consecutive days. Still to come on DD India Live. Defence Minister Rajnath Singh says Pakistan Army Chief's comparison of India and Pakistan as Ferrari versus dump truck was a confession of Pakistan's poor economic situation. India's R. Pragnananda and D. Gukesh settle for draws in the round 4 of Swinkerfield Cup 2025.
Geopolitics and trade deals. Economic challenges amid development. Hard work and the path to prosperity. It's the economy always. Between walkers, money is what money does and says. Supply creates its own demand. Between the bulls pulls and bears tears. When supply chains globalization and India rises to the podium. We'll get you centered with the economic brief at 8 p.m. every Thursday on DD India.
Welcome back. You're watching DD India Live. I'm Shubhendu Ghosh. Prime Minister Narendra Modi inaugurated the Anta-Simaria Bridge project on National Highway 31 on Friday, marking a significant boost to road connectivity in Bihar. The new bridge will reduce the extra travel distance by over 100 kilometers for heavy vehicles traveling between North and South Bihar areas. The bridge will also boost economic growth in adjoining areas, especially in North Bihar, which are dependent on South Bihar and Jharkhand for getting necessary raw material. Addressing the event, Prime Minister Modi reiterated that providing Pakka houses to the poor is one of his key priorities.
मेरा एक बड़ा संकल्प है, जब तक हर जरूरतमंद को पक्का घर नहीं मिल जाता, मोदी चैन से नहीं बैठेगा। इसी सोच के साथ पिछले 11 साल में 4 करोड़ से अधिक गरीबों को पक्के घर बनाकर दे दिए गए। और हमने सिर्फ घर यानी 4 दीवारें नहीं दी, बल्कि उन घरों के साथ गरीब को उसका स्वाभिमान दिया है। और जो लोग अब भी पीएम आवास योजना के लाभ से छूट गए हैं, मैं उन्हें विश्वास दिलाता हूं कि पीएम आवास का अभियान तब तक जारी रहेगा जब तक हर गरीब को अपना पक्का घर नहीं मिल जाता।
And emphasizing that the Indian Constitution expects honesty and transparency from every public representative, Prime Minister stressed that dignity of the Constitution must not be allowed to be torn apart. Earlier, Prime Minister Modi began the day with a roadshow in Gaya, followed by a public meeting where he laid the foundation stone and inaugurated multiple development projects belonging to multiple sectors, including power, road, health, urban development, and water supply. Prime Minister Modi said Operation Sindoor has drawn a new line in India's defense strategy. He added that no one can escape after sending terrorists into India and planning attacks. He said that even if terrorists hide in the depths of earth, India's missiles will bury them there.
जब कश्मीर के पहलगाम में आतंकी हमला हुआ था, हमारे निर्दोष नागरिकों को उनका धर्म पूछ करके मारा गया। मैंने बिहार की इसी धरती से आतंकवादियों को मिट्टी में मिलाने की बात कही थी। आज दुनिया देख रही है, बिहार की धरती से लिया गया वो संकल्प पूरा हो चुका है। आपको याद होगा, उधर से पाकिस्तान हम पर ड्रोन हमले कर रहा था, मिसाइलें दाग रहा था, और इधर भारत पाकिस्तान की मिसाइलों को हवा में तिनके की तरह बिखेर रहा था। पाकिस्तान की एक भी मिसाइल हमें नुकसान नहीं पहुंचा पाई। साथियों, ऑपरेशन सिंदूर ने भारत की रक्षा नीति की नई लकीर खींच दी है।
Prime Minister also flagged off Amrit Bharat Express between Gaya and Delhi and the Buddhist circuit train between Vaishali and Kodarma. Prime Minister Modi inaugurated multiple metro rail projects worth over 5,200 crore rupees in Kolkata on Friday, giving the city a major infrastructure push and world-class connectivity. PM flagged off mass rapid transport services on the newly constructed stretches of 3 metro rail lines in Kolkata. In other developments, Defence Minister Rajnath Singh said Pakistan Army Chief Asim Munir's recent comparison of India and Pakistan as Ferrari and dump truck was a confession of Pakistan's poor economic situation.
अगर दो देश एक साथ आजाद हुए और एक देश ने कड़ी मेहनत, सही नीतियों और दूरदृष्टि से फेरारी जैसी अर्थव्यवस्था बनाई और दूसरा अभी भी डंपर की स्थिति में है, यह उनकी अपनी नाकामी है। मैं असीम मुनीर के इस बयान को एक कन्फेशन के रूप में मैं मानता हूं, देखता हूं।
In sports, Indian shooter Elvanil Vallavarivan clinched the gold in women's 10-meter air rifle competition, the 16th Asian Championship on Friday. The 26-year-old from Tamil Nadu, who has won multiple gold medals in World Cups, shot a score of 253.3 to finish on top in the final and claim her second gold at the Continental Showpiece. She won the first medal way back in 2019 in Taiwan when she was honing her skills under the tutelage of Olympic medalist shooter Gagan Narang at his Gun for Glory Academy. This was Vallavarivan's first individual podium finish in the ongoing event, having won a silver and bronze in the team events previously. In chess, Indian Grandmaster R. Pragnananda was held to an easy draw by America's Samuel Sevian in the 4th round of Sinquefield Cup. Praggnanandhaa faced the Queen's Gambit, declined as white and could not pose any real problems in the way of Sevian. The middle game saw a lot of pieces change hands, but the game soon ended in a draw. Meanwhile, world champion D. Kukesh also settled for a draw with Maxime Bachia-Lagrave of France in the fourth round. With 5 rounds still to come, Caruana moved into the sole lead on 3 points and is followed by Praggnanandhaa and Aronian on 2.5 each. That's all for this edition of DD India Live. Let us know your thoughts on the news of the day. For those on the go, you can get all the latest news and updates from India and across the world on DD India mobile app. This app is available on both Android and iOS. Scan the QR code on your screens and download now. And we'll be back with more news as it breaks here on DD India. I'm Shubhendu Ghosh from all of us here in Delhi. Thanks for watching DD India Live. Namaskar.